We're about to
You'll update us. Look, it's Steve. Where's everybody else?
Oh, we have got a small group tonight, haven't we?
Just YouTube, plus
Plus, Commissioner Toyoka virtually, so.
That's.
Oh, right.
But then we don't have anything on the agenda
So-
with the proclamation and minutes, so.
Do we have? We ready? Okay. All right, work sessions are an opportunity for board members to discuss issues informally with staff and invited guests. The board encourages members of the public to attend work sessions and listen to this discussion, but there is generally no opportunity for public comment. Members of the public wishing to address the board are welcome to do so during the board's regularly scheduled meetings. And two items on our work session. First is the agenda review, and we've got that up on the screen. And I'll note that we have Commissioner Toyoka joining us virtually. And Commissioner Bangs and Commissioner Weber excused this evening. Any questions on the rolling agenda here?
I would just add that, I'd like to, I don't know if it goes in commissioner comment or wherever, but I've resigned my liaison position with Colpack and Northwest Pack, which you know about. This next session is all about ODOT, and so, I'm eager to have another Clatsop County Commissioner step up into those roles.
Okay.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Commissioner Thompson. Yeah, I did, county manager did inform me about your decision. Any other comments, questions? All right, go ahead and move on to our main topic here, the FEMA buyout Pick'em decision, and our Community Development Director, Gail Rickson. Gail.
Good evening, Chair and members of the board. I know Chair Quilo, you were in the meeting, the coalition meeting this afternoon, and you're very familiar with that. We have brought this back to your board for additional discussion because there are obviously timelines that we face and decisions that your board needs to make and have discussion about. And so as it currently stands, we are still in the position where FEMA is telling us that by December 1st, we need to choose and implement one of three pathways to remain in compliance with the Endangered Species Act and the requirements of the National Flood Insurance Program. The three pathways are either prohibit all development within the flood plain, adopt a model ordinance, or issue permits on a habitat assessment by habitat assessment basis, basically. And so we do have the guidance documents that FEMA has published to date on the model ordinance and the habitat assessment guide. Frankly, I have read through both of those. I've read through the model ordinance 6 times. It is not a very well-written document, but it is the document that we have to work with at this point. The habitat assessment guide is something that would be implemented, I guess, for lack of a better word, or carried out by the property owner and whatever consultants they chose to hire. It is also going to be a very complicated process. There are no good answers. There is no win. Okay, I would just be very frank. There is no win in this situation as it stands right now. One thing that I would like to suggest for consideration as your board discusses this is, we know we have this December 1st deadline that's sort of looming over our head at this point, and a possible option may be to just do a temporary moratorium on floodplain permits for possibly a 3-month period beginning December 1st, where that would help to keep us in compliance. We would still need to eventually pick a pathway and do that, depending, of course, pending any variable scenarios, litigation, legislation, anything else that might happen that changes the course of this discussion. But having a brief moratorium could help everybody have a bit of breathing room as we try to work through the technical trainings on how to implement the moratorium, but the model ordinance and the habitat assessment guide. And those trainings are not going to be starting till the fall, probably September, October with FEMA. So that doesn't give us a lot of choice as staff. And to be able to give you good recommendations. Right now, my best recommendation is a 3-month moratorium, because that's really the best I have. But really, that's kind of where it stands. That's not a very full presentation perhaps, but I know that
Yeah.
you were at the meeting, and you probably have some things that you would
No,
like
I
to bring.
I appreciate it, Gail, and you asked good questions during the meeting, and I think a lot of the discussion mirrored what our last work session discussion was. People were working through kind of the options and what's good, what's gonna happen to us. And I don't think there was a real clear definition of what the consequences really were. A lot of discussion today was, well, what can they do to you? What can FEMA really do to you if you decide to do nothing? Just like we talked about it. Betsy Johnson was on there, a number of community development directors, and a number of the industry folks, from the Realtors Association as well. There's a real need, I think, in my opinion, to take the lead. Someone has to take the lead on this. I think there was a lot of kind of looking around the virtual room to see who would be the one to do that. And I think we're still going to be discussing that, but there's a need for money, fundraising for litigation, which is, in my opinion, the obvious way that this needs to be going, in order to try to give some pressure to FEMA to go through the NEPA process as they promised they would. And there's having Molly Lawrence, who's from Van Ness Feldman and has been involved with the process since 2015. They've already sued, and that was dismissed just because there wasn't standing at the time. And the standing was because we hadn't had any damages. There wasn't any repercussions. Now we have it. Now these pre-compliance measures demonstrate that there is an impact, there's damages by implementing these, and Warrenton was one of those plaintiffs. So I think that there's an opportunity with the litigation that's already been out there, and obviously would need to be updated, and there'd be some opportunity for others to join as plaintiffs. But that to me is the way to go. I recognize that we have to do something in regards to a moratorium, or we talked about the ordinance, and it just, to me, I would rather do nothing. I would rather go the litigious route. And I think there's a real need for us to step up and to make some kind of a financial commitment to that. I think $25,000 or something like that is not unreasonable for us to say, this is really going to have a detrimental impact on housing, economic development. The city of Warrenton is the poster child of 80% of their city is basically going to be undevelopable. And here you have the downtown area, the Coast Guard, the airport, all of these areas that there's opportunity that is going to be closed down. So I really think that there's a need for someone to step up, and I think others will follow. It would be great for us to take the lead. So we're willing to commit $25,000 for litigation or exploring litigation, at least get the ball rolling. That would give us some breathing room and some time, in my opinion.
Well,
Mr. Thompson.
that's pretty clear. Thank you. I think litigation actually is doing something. And if we're in the meeting and there's a motion to that effect, I will support that motion. My concern, as I said before, is that we not leave our people unprotected. I think your proposal that we have a moratorium makes sense. I wonder if 3 months is enough and we actually need 6 months, because lawyers are not only expensive. First kill all the lawyers, right? Shakespeare. Well, it's a form of warfare. And so what we're looking at is ritualized conflict in a courtroom that costs our taxpayers their money. And the only reason we would do it is because the loss, if we do nothing, is so great that it's the preferable alternative in my mind, because we do need to protect our people. So a temporary moratorium, 3 months, 6 months, something to give FEMA time, because I think they're scrambling. I think they're almost asking us, by the way they're handling this, to do a counterbalancing lawsuit for the ones that have already been filed by environmental organizations.
I agree.
So dueling lawsuits, I mean, geez. On the other hand, we've got to do something for people. And so, yes, go forward with the money. Yes, have a moratorium. I'd rather give us adequate breathing room and have some kind of greater flexibility. I think 6 months may be enough. I don't think 3 months is, because I think the cumbersome bureaucracy in Washington, DC or Seattle or wherever this is going to happen will not be able to respond appropriately to our needs in time. I appreciate your bringing that suggestion. I support it. I just expanded. I agree with your suggestion.
If I might, check with them at the board. I think that in the concept of the temporary moratorium, I think the 3 months came really from me thinking that it can be extended at any time, depending upon what happens. There's so many different variables here. There's a legislative variable. We're not sure what that may or may not look like and how feasible that really is. We certainly have legal options, but even within that umbrella, there's probably more than one option and probably more than one lawsuit that could come, out of that. And, then we have the efforts that are being made by the federal delegation to try to extend these timelines 90 days. So our moratorium would kind of follow temporarily. What that is during the winter months. So there's not a lot of applications that are coming through during that time period. But my view is just to protect us, having the ability to flexibly respond, because there's so many uncertainties right now with everything. Even the materials that have been provided to us would not be in a condition to just lead us into an ordinance that could be faithfully implemented by staff and comfortably implemented by staff. I mean, there's so much more work that needs to be done to really serve the multiple interests that are falling under this umbrella right now. And so I think that may be an option to buy us a little bit of time. It may not be too impactful on the public given the time of year, but I think what I'm wondering when I have conversations, and I think county council has experience too, as he's reached out to other councils, is you don't see a lot of commissioners engaged in this dialogue. And I don't know if AOC has been talking about this, as 31 counties are being impacted by it. I am not sure where the city councils are, because this is a huge deal. And at this point, they have had really pretty meager pledges to help fund the organization of this effort. And so our contribution, if the board agreed, if it was aimed towards litigation, would be the cornerstone, really, contribution to the entire effort. And it just makes me wonder, what is everybody missing when it comes to this issue? And that's why I think, and it was talked about today, is there's a communication challenge for this, because I think the property owners don't fully understand what the implications are. I'm not sure where a lot of the other agencies are regarding this, because it is going to impact 31 out of 36 counties. And so I'm just wondering, it seems right now, and granted, we were all surprised by the FEMA timeline, but I don't think anyone's really prepared to move forward and to make the difficult decisions that they're going to make, and then having that be confounded by the fact that the materials we have received from FEMA are not go ready. I mean, they aren't ready to go. We don't understand them completely. We haven't had time to work with FEMA through them. I'm not even sure how much DLCD has really been
They have,
involved.
I think, the same level of information and involvement as we do.
Yeah, and so there's just so many questions. This is such a big public policy issue, because it is a county instrument through our through our code. And I mean,
Well, and
so I guess what I'm really saying is, I think we're gonna have to try to figure out a lot of different mechanisms to buy time.
Yeah.
While we try to implement a multifaceted response, so.
And I would just say that our community development director is up on, I mean, is as educated as any of the community development directors on these issues. Sarah Absher from Tillamook County echoed what our community development director has said and told us. I just don't, and I think that there's this confusion from everyone about how they could implement any of these these compliance measures. It's just not something that anybody's got a grasp on.
Yeah.
And I see Commissioner Toyoka has his hand up. I will say that the federal delegation asked a lot of the right, that letter asked a lot of the right questions. It wasn't strong enough. It was weak. I think asking for 90 days, was something, but it wasn't enough. I mean, it needed to say, complete the NEPA process before you do anything. And it does ask for an explanation of why they didn't go through the NEPA process, but it doesn't mandate that they do that. So I think there's a lot of things that fell short in that letter that the federal delegation put together. And I think that's something that we have to be willing to go the rest of the way with. Yeah. Commissioner Toyoka?
Good evening, everyone. Hey, and you're right on point, Commissioner Quila, met with, we had the housing task force meeting today, especially, and, you talk about impact of what this could have, this FEMA buyout. We have, private public partnerships going on to develop affordable housing, workforce housing, and this is a killer, and it's funny because you talk to some of the larger, companies, if they're based in the valley, they don't really understand the impacts because it doesn't really affect them. They look at it, but they don't have the same floodplain issues. So it's not as impactful. But when they try to build the same projects out here, they're looking for it going, oh my gosh, I can't build, So it'd be nice to explore if, I know we're talking about the county and, government agencies, looking forward to some kind of whether it's lawsuit or litigation or whatever, but can we include private in there to show the impact? Number one, because it is impactful, not just to the county, cities, but all the individuals within them will feel this pinch. Secondly, I mean, yeah, I'd go for a 90-day moratorium, but I say after NEPA guidelines are published, because how do we comply to something that's not even published? I mean, they want us to follow guidelines that they don't have not even established, which seems very unreasonable. I mean, how could you effectively do that? It might be a rhetorical question, but it truly is. And, in the letter, as you stated, I thought it was pretty soft because it didn't address the core issues. It just said basically said, yeah, well, inconvenience says we don't have the time to react, but it didn't really address from housing issues, which is a key one here. We have the guidelines and these housing mandates. You actually have to comply with this FEMA buyout. We will never be able to achieve them. Number two is if you have floodplain issues, how is anybody going to get a federally backed loan to own a home, to purchase, to develop? That won't be available either. So it incurs so many challenges that I think they need to, I hate to say, but they need to think this through before they force us to do a decision. So, I think litigation is a proper way, and hopefully we can get some kind of, whether it's a moratorium or something, but I would actually like to tie it to when they publish the NEPA guidelines are published. If possible, I don't know if that's legally possible, but, we need to have that guideline before we can move forward.
Go ahead.
Well, thank you. Well, I hear you, Commissioner Toyoka. So it occurs to me that there are three pathways about the communications issue. One is certainly the Department of Land Conservation and Development. I spoke with Brandon Persinger after the wildfire map because I talk about our challenges from the dais, at LCDC, it doesn't necessarily percolate through the leadership, through the staff level. So the conduits to make that a complete understanding from top to bottom at DLCD about the challenges to all of the administrative roles, to housing, to industrial lands. I mean, the list goes on and on. They have to understand and take into account the challenges that we face from these federal initiatives at DLCD. I wonder if the planning director's organization is the strongest way to permeate, I would say, across the rest of the state and unite the 31, at least the 31 planning directors from the affected counties. And then the third thing is the AOC policy committee structure. We're having the AOC District 7 meeting here in September. So that would be an ideal time and place to put on the agenda a presentation about that and the challenges. So we can start that regionally, but we can also take it through the policy committee and the leadership of the Association of Oregon Counties. I don't know if the League of Oregon Cities is also interested in this. As you say, Warrenton is highly impacted. So those two governmental entities, groups can do it, our planning directors, but DLCD can't put us between, I mean, they can do it, obviously, just like the federal government can say, well, you have a December 1 deadline and it's dropped dead. There's no negotiating it. So I hear what everybody has to say about how unreasonable and unworkable it is. Nevertheless, there it is.
My only response is that we talked a lot about what these consequences is and the fear tactic that's kind of been used, not just this time, but it happened back in 2010 too. I remember in the city of Warrenton, we had DLCD acting as the facilitator and saying, you guys have to adopt these floodplain maps. You might have a lot of issues with the accuracy, but go ahead and do it because there's no choice, even though you're mapped without levees in Warrenton and all these other areas, like those levees that have been there 100 years aren't there, which we were obviously didn't agree with, but okay, we've got to adopt these. And then it wasn't but 3 months later that they decided, you know what, other areas of the country, we're going to map those levees. We're going to give you an opportunity to provide an alternative way to show modeling and why these levees do provide. And your floodplain is going to be different in some of these areas. That to me is the inconsistency that we have to push it back against. It's fear. They talked a lot about what these consequences really would mean if we did nothing. And there are so few cases where FEMA has come down on local jurisdictions and said, you know what, you have to follow this because of ESA requirements or endangered species requirements. If you're not doing this, what are they going to do to you? I mean, I think, yes, there's a lot of fear. I understand it. And I think that we need to be mindful of that and protect our citizens. But this is something you talked about, housing. It's not just about the housing that's going in, it's about the infrastructure to that house. And this is going to keep you building your water, sewer, roads, and all that in these areas. Even if the housing is outside the floodplain, that's going to be impacted. You've got these, I guess the letter, the options we have, we talked about the letter. I think that Mayor Balanceford was going to take a first crack at it. I haven't seen anything from him. I think we need to put together a letter, try to get everybody. I know our county manager has talked about that. We talked about the county council getting together with other county councils and seeing where they're at, starting with Tillamook and with Columbia County. And then, yeah, I think we need to, I don't know. I think those are the main things, but I think we need to push back on the mandate that we need to, have to do something because this is FEMA rattling a lot of saber rattling is what we talked about on that meeting. And it is, and there's no fear that goes around through jurisdictions and through other organizations. And I think we need to get this right. I think we need to push back.
I would, ma'am.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, I thought you were done.
Yeah.
Okay. I agree on pushing back. Here's my greatest concern, because I am a fuss budget worrywart, okay? My greatest concern is we pass December 1st deadline. We don't have anything really in place. There's some kind of catastrophic event, and we don't have catastrophic event insurance reimbursement. available from FEMA. That's my concern. That's my worry about it. I don't want to leave us unprotected.
Well, and I think they talked a lot about that too. There's a process. They're not gonna just boot you out of this.
You trust them?
Well, I don't trust anything. I don't trust anything that they say, but I also know that experience that says they're not gonna boot you for not doing something, not enforcing on day one.
And Gail can correct me if I'm wrong, but on December 1st is when we have to identify which of the 3 pickums that we would be committing to. And then we have until July, end of July to actually implement it. Part of what we would have to decide is what's that, if we're gonna choose the model ordinance just to choose something early, go into a moratorium and wait and see what happens, that's an option. I think, I mean, just as a county manager, what I would suggest is that doing what we can do to really have the impact that we're trying to have on the decision making, we want to do what we have to do, not to create liability or risk for ourselves, while still trying to buy the time to actually influence, whether it's by legal means, legislative means, other means, to have more time. I mean, time is the factor here. I mean, I don't see any good that's going to come out of this very tight timeline. And so I think that that's where the board's options are going to really be. From a litigation perspective, I think, and Anthony was on the call too today, but I think probably the coalition is in the best place to go forward with litigation in the most cost-effective manner for the agencies. I think there's going to be public sector organizations and private sector organizations that need to step up to help capitalize that initial foray into the courts. And who knows at the end of the day what that might cost, because we never know. But and I think Clatsop County has been the first that I know of that's at least offered to participate at that level. Not that a bunch of people jumped up and said, yeah, we'll do the same. But I think
they will.
But I think that is the vehicle. And I think to Commissioner Toyoka's question, it would include private sector folks too, and their associations that are very concerned about this and who have been financing previous litigation back in 2017 or whatever that was. So, I mean, I think that's all kind of the path forward. My only concern is there's not a lot of organization yet that hasn't congealed to be kind of the self-moving response team that we all need it to be. But hopefully now that people are getting a little bit more aware, that will happen quicker.
Yeah,
is what I have to hope. But I think the county making some kind of a commitment would hopefully facilitate others to do the same.
I think so.
So
I just want to say one thing. Once upon a time, I got licensed to sell insurance. And the game was to take in the money and to find any reason to not give the money out. FEMA's fundamentally an insurance company. And listening to people talk about trying to get FEMA reimbursement, even when the plan was in effect and they were supposed to, it's difficult, it's time consuming. The documentation is horrible. They're looking for any reason to say, no, you can't have money. That's what pushes me. That's what gives me the sense of urgency, because I want to see us step up. So I'm glad that I think we have agreement that that's what we want to do.
Good. Yeah. Commissioner Toyoka.
Yeah, you said a question about, the coalition meeting there. Was there any discussion of an injunction against pre-implementation of this program until there's definitions, or would that be a path that we could explore?
I think,
Oh, sorry.
go ahead.
I'd say there's some kind of high level discussion. We didn't get into specifics, but that would definitely be a path that we would be looking to explore during the litigation.
Thank you.
Sure. Clatsop County versus, oh my goodness.
Well,
But hopefully it wouldn't be.
it wouldn't be just us, hopefully, it would be.
Yeah.
It'd be the many, I mean. That's the goal, but I think at this point, we're the ones that are more.
And interestingly, I think, as of what I heard on that phone call and what I've said before, is that during the last round of litigation where you had national organizations that were very involved in funding the litigation, they now are thinking it's just going to be Oregon, Washington, California, they're going to be impacted by this. And so your national organizations aren't going to be as motivated to put money towards a lawsuit because it's not going to affect the rest of the country, which is fundamentally.
Which is interesting.
I mean,
that it said
and that's exactly,
Yeah.
exactly what I had said at our last work session, is that it's always going to be Region 10 and the West Coast that's gonna have to deal with this, while the rest of the country doesn't have to. And it's outrageous that we are always put in this position. Like, gosh, we know one thing after another, whether it's HCP or this, but I mean, we've got to take a stand at some point, and we've got to have, our federal delegation, working on our behalf as well. DLCD should be advocating for us. They shouldn't be an advocate for FEMA to try to put these in place. They should be advocating for our community.
Come and testify.
Well, but I'm just saying, from history, I saw what happened in 2010. But they did not play that role, and they should play that role this time around.
And I think Chair Kula also, in conversations with the governor's office, which we may have mentioned before, did ask that the governor
Yes,
request the extension of the timelines for the Pickums to NEPA. I mean, I think it would be helpful to have the governor request that and not just the local entities that are trying to figure out how to implement
yes.
what FEMA's asking for. And so, and I think that's where, we need some more from the governor's office, which would help guide DLCD, which would help us, and hopefully the federal delegation could support what the governor was requesting. So,
And this was a discussion with Nate Stice, who's our coordinator for the Regional Solutions team. And we did make that very clear. But, we really do need to have him. He was on the call today too, so he did hear a lot of the discussion, but we need him to carry that to everyone at the governor's office and make sure that, we're going to be watching. I mean, we got to be accountable. Anyway.
Does this impact the metro area? Because that's where the bulk of the votes are. Okay, if it impacts the metro area, we have a chance.
But I'll tell you one thing that bothers me is, and I mentioned this to Gail, is that, with the levies, because the levies are the big issue in the east of our county and in Warrenton and other areas, Lewis and Clark, Youngs River, these are areas that they consider don't have any flood protection that, obviously is there. And some of them receive provisional accreditation through FEMA as they work to get accredited. So they were granted that they were not going to be floodplain while they tried to work through the process. Warrenton had that for 2 years and then it fell off. It went away. And Portland and the Multnomah County Drainage District are actually under a 10-year provisional accreditation. They're actually getting that afforded, for a decade in order to work through their issues and not have to deal with floodplain restrictions like we're having to deal with in Clatsop County. So I think that's, I wish that we had the same exact treatment that our Portland metro areas have. I don't fault them at all for having that, but it takes a decade in order to work through the process to try to get accredited. And if you don't have that time and then this is what it happens. And you're mapped without levees. You have a floodplain that extends 80% of your city in the city of Warrenton, all these areas, east of town, Brownsmead and everything. You're not going to be doing any development. They can say that this is going to be, well, we're just establishing a process of permitting all this. And listening to that discussion, it effectively will stop development. There's not going to be this, there, transactional, you're gonna come in and get your permit for floodplain development and no problems. That's not gonna happen. So it's just.
And it's
gonna-
not just development, if I can piggyback on that, it's the maintenance activities that are considered development now. So there's that.
Right.
But here's a tangent, because I always have a tangent, right? The diking districts, we need, if we could, because we don't have enough to do, but if we had a plan for looking at our diking districts and how to support them, because we've seen year after year after year that the volunteers who maintain and support those district activities are harder and harder to come by. So I'd like us, when we're contemplating this, I don't know if the metro area has some kind of support system in place for the governance of the diking districts and the maintenance of those dikes, but I'd like us to have that so that we have the actual support needed for them to be effective when they need to be. I know you've wanted one more thing to do, right? Well, I'm
Well,
supposed to.
yeah, I mean, there are, in the statutes, there are ways that the county has to sometimes step in to help them govern themselves and to satisfy state statutes. And we have talked about some of those issues. It's really a very similar issue to the special districts. I mean, it's
Yeah.
very similar, and to the, not only special districts, but those water districts that are private. It's the same type of issue, and I wish there was quicker, easier, more sufficient answers, but yes, I think that's part of what has to be discussed in all of this, is how do we maintain the governance, the financing, and the maintenance of the levees.
Well,
It's an important point. So.
It's a fact of life, and you and I have talked about it repeatedly over the years. And how do we have enough money with an underfunded local government to deal with what needs to be dealt with for the things over which we can have authority? And there are so many others, we don't even have the authority or the resources, like water issues. I mean, this is a big problem. We have water issues, we have fire issues. This isn't going well. Okay,
Yeah, I agree.
okay.
So
Cheerful.
I think, yeah, out of this work session, hopefully we can craft a letter that we can get others to sign on within the county. And I think that was a great idea that our county manager had, and our county council is going to reach out to Tillamook and Columbia County and try to get some consensus about direction about what they're thinking and how they're going forward. And then I'd love to see us commit to $25,000 to help this effort to the coalition. And maybe we can do that during our commissioner comments. I can raise it as a motion.
Yeah.
And we can vote on it.
So just one other question, Chair, is, as we draft a letter, it may be an opportunity, as we discussed, to bring together the mayors
Mhm.
and other city officials, just even in Clatsop County as a start. Once we share it with them, so we can have a conversation about whether we're all rowing in the same direction. And even, I mean, I think the more support, even if it may not mirror the county's level of support, but the more support for litigation from cities, counties, special districts, whomever, will be helpful.
I completely agree. And there's an education component because people don't understand the risk and what the issues really are. So that's going to be part of our role.
When they
If that
come
helps
to the
anybody.
counter, they
Yeah.
will begin to understand. I mean, so that's gonna fall on you and
So we have already printed up informational flyers. We had worked with public affairs to put information out. We've got the flyers posted. They're on our counters. Anybody who gets a floodplain permit
Yeah.
gets a flyer. Next month, I'm speaking at the Housing Coalition meeting at Tillamook Seaside to talk about the biological opinion and the implementation of it. The association, the Oregon Association of Planning Directors, we are doing a special meeting about it next month as well, but we have been talking about it prior to this. So we're well aware of it. in terms of community development directors and planning managers. I think I just have one question for clarification in that regards is in regard to the moratorium. Is that something that you would like us to move forward with? And I ask only because as we approach December 1st, if we have not made a choice, then we will default to habitat assessment. And at that point, I have no mechanism in my code unless we start an amendment process to require that. I can't do it. And having a moratorium in place at that point would be beneficial. And I speak
Yeah,
selfishly
no,
as
I
the community
understand. I
development
mean,
director.
we don't
for my
know how to,
staff,
we don't
but-
know how to go the other directions. That's the thing. The
Yeah.
ordinance or the habitat assessment, those are things that we've already discussed aren't workable. And that's what I heard on that phone call.
Right,
Other jurisdictions aren't able to put those in place either.
until
So
we,
I don't know what else we do besides a moratorium or nothing.
yeah, until we get to the training sessions with FEMA and we may come out with better understanding after.
And they're
I say
making, they're
may,
making
I
it
say
all
may.
that.
But yeah, I think FEMA doesn't want to be put in the position of being the bearer of the bad news. And I think they have hedged on their language when they should have just been very frank.
Yeah, and they're putting it on rural jurisdictions and other jurisdictions to be the heavy on it. And I think it's pretty ridiculous.
So if your board's okay, we'll at least start working on that as the path forward, and then obviously things could change tomorrow.
Yeah.
Because who knows?
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, okay.
All right, thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Appreciate all your work on it.
No, thank you.
Thanks, Gail.
Thank you.
Okay.
Does it fall under the Water Resources
I've
Department?
had a headache since
Yeah.
about 3 weeks.
We want to talk about it.
Does the Water Resources Department have anything to say about this? I never hear from them. They have limited authority.
I mean, the state, works as in a kind of a coordinated muscle movement way, and so I mean, we haven't heard from the state about how they feel about this one way or the other. So no, I haven't heard from any state agency about it. So I don't know, Gail, have you heard anything from any state agency? No. And I think that's part of the missing link is the governor, if she would weigh in, then that almost gives the green light for others to weigh in also. But
Well, then. Do you have any other truthful topics for tonight, or is that enough?
If we have anything else on our work session? You wanted to talk about during your commission comments about the
Commissioner
commissioner
exchange?
exchange?
I do.
Okay,
It's,
do we want to do it now or do we want?
We can do it.
Yeah, do it now.
sure, we've got time. What do you want people to see? I want to take people so they can, look at the mid part of the county that I call the heart of Clatsop County. I want them to see Cove Beach, want them to see, Cannon Beach, Arch Cape, the touristy areas compared and contrasted with what I call the heartland in the rural parts of Clatsop County. But then when we head north, we're gonna be looking. Commissioner Toyoka and I share the representation of Seaside, so. Commissioner Toyoka, I don't know if you have any particular presentations you want to make. I don't know if you have time to be available on October 22nd, but that's when I would be 21st, 22nd. That's when I would be looking at entertaining. It sounds so pleasant, doesn't it? Welcoming those commissioners from Wasco and Deschutes County who want to understand more about Clatsop County. I don't know if you have time to be involved or if you have anything that you want them to see.
Tentatively, it looks, open at this point, so I could be involved, but, I think, any way that we can find common ground to help with issues would be nice too. From
Okay.
housing to, so we can share challenges and hopefully share ideas on how to, reconcile those challenges. That would be great.
Okay. Okay, then so I'm trying to figure out how all of this fits together. If we can do Seaside and Warrenton and part of Astoria on the 22nd, because on the 23rd, what I would hope to do, I've spoken with Denise Laufman, who's got some pressed projects. I spoke briefly with Lindsay Davis about Hampton. So we can look at both that economy. I'd like to get some fishing in there. So I'm not sure how we integrate all that, just pack it in.
I wonder, Commissioner, if something like Tongue Point and the Coast Guard would be interesting, or something they don't deal with a lot. And
Yeah.
Tongue Point with that boat lift,
Mhm.
and then the expansion of the Coast Guard berths
Yeah, I think
down
that'd
at
be
Tongue
great.
Point would be, I think they'd probably be interested in that as a major economic development project that had a lot of public monies into it,
Yeah, and the Coast Guard certainly has a huge impact.
and Job Corps is also there,
Yeah.
so.
Yeah.
And fishnet, those, that kind of tech. Our economy is based on that.
For a minute. Okay,
I'll say, are you looking for like schedules for,
yeah, do
because
you,
the 23rd is, are you talking about the 23rd or not?
21, 22, 23, those are the 3 days. that are-
23rd is wide open for me, but the 21st is not a good day.
Okay,
Second, I've got things that I can move around, but the 23rd is a
okay,
lot better.
okay. So, so we'll look to include you in that. Okay,
And I don't know if you're sure about the ports, if that's something,
man, you could just spend your day at the port, though, you know,
or
I
they
can-
can just give them a little window.
okay, okay, sure,
But it could be something that will. Could walk them through, and I just think it's probably painting a picture of some of the regulatory challenges and the economic development and maintenance challenges.
Yeah.
Of maintaining port assets. Small port assets.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And the business nexus, the fact that there are businesses on the port that are generating jobs and what stresses that they're under.
yeah. Yeah,
They could talk about the cruise ships and other things too, it's
see,
augmenting. but-
it's how to get it all packed in, and I forgot my basket.
Yeah, I just think even if you had 30, 40 minutes, you could get through a lot.
So we might get a tour bus or a van or something and just drive them around, because that's the way to communicate while we're moving. So maybe, because, and the hospital is a big deal too, so there's a lot to talk about, but I want them to, the varieties.
Was
Sorry,
it possibly like Fort George, Bowie and I about biodigester, kind of work it into that?
I
So-
think if you're at the port, you can probably get Andrew Bornstein or somebody from Bornstein's as well to talk about fisheries and processing.
okay, okay,
Or if you go to Warrenton, Juan Delgado from Pacific Seafood, who's always really accommodating.
yeah, I think we need a bus. Because I think what we need is a chance to get people on that bus that can talk as we're driving. Because I think with the geography involved, with the distances, it's gonna take that compression of the.
Yeah.
Yeah, we could have a tour of the FEMA BIOP area and the FEMA flood map area, and we can
Well,
talk to the,
You could have Back Burns, just give them a little bit of the history.
Yeah.
Well, the Astoria is the oldest city in the West Coast. and
yeah. Yeah, there's there's the question isn't too little, the question is too much, and how to have a coherent plan, and this is why they pay people real money to do this. So I'm gonna be working on this and looking for your help, and but I have to tell you, I went, this is kind of my report, but I was at the wildfire mapping meeting in Salem. And here's Scott Hagee, who's gonna be one of the people coming. And we're all talking about, it's great that you're doing this wildfire mapping, but the state Board of Forestry's policies are gonna increase the fuel load because we can't cut trees. And that increases our wildfire risk. And then the federal policies. And so all of that is part of the picture. If you're making the problem worse, taking a snapshot of the fire danger now, and we had a woman who came to the meeting from Marion County who was involved in the Beeching Creek fire, who lost everything in that fire that she had built over 40 years. And nobody from Marion County was there to talk about it. Nobody was there to listen to her grief and rage about that. But it doesn't do just to have dry statistical models, whether it comes from the federal government or Oregon State or any place else. It's the balancing and the harmonizing of the human activity with the environmental concerns that's so challenging. So I hear your frustration, and the levers on us are considerable. That's some solid 2x4s or crowbars or whatever you want to say. Well, they could be tools, but they're being used as weapons. So how can we shift that understanding? This is very helpful. This is very helpful. Thank you. I'll keep
Good.
reaching out.
And let me know how I can help. for sure. So,
Sure. Sure. Get me a van and people to sit in it.
No, that's exciting to showcase lots of county,
Yeah,
all the good stuff that we're doing.
yeah, yeah. And the challenges.
And challenges.
Yeah.
Anything else that we have for our work session? Okay, we'll go ahead and take a 9-minute reprieve.
Yeah, Jim's got a different colored shoe on.
Okay. The Board of Commissioners, as the governing body of Clatsop County, all county service districts for which this body so acts, and as the Clatsop County Local Contract Review Board, is now meeting in regular session. All rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. Clerk of the Board, can we have the roll call?
Chair Quila,
Here.
Vice Chair Banks,
Commissioner Bangs is excused this evening.
okay, Commissioner Toyoka,
I'm here.
Commissioner Webb,
Commissioner Webb is excused this evening.
Commissioner Thompson.
I'm here.
All right, we are small but mighty tonight. Okay, the first item is the agenda approval. I'd like to add one item to the agenda this evening. That would be the discussion on a financial pledge to the Coalition for Floodplain Protection. Can add that as a business item.
How about, Colpack and Northwest Act replacement? Is that appropriate for this meeting, or what do you want to do about
I
that?
don't think so. I think we need to talk about that a little bit more.
Okay, all right, sure. Then I would, move to adopt the agenda as amended, Mr. Chair.
Second.
Moved and seconded to adopt or to approve the agenda as amended. All those in favor signify with an aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? Okay, motion carries. First item is a proclamation for World Suicide Prevention Day. And with us is the dedicated and hardworking Rebecca Larson, Manager of Behavioral Health and Care Management at Columbia Memorial Hospital. Welcome, Rebecca.
Hi. So I am Rebecca Larson, Manager of Behavioral Health and Care Management at CMH.
Can
Thank
you
you
eat
for
the
having
mic
me.
so that you're recorded properly? Because otherwise, people on the recording don't get to hear your voice.
Is that better? Okay. This evening, I wanted to just take a brief moment to talk to you about the importance of World Suicide Prevention Day. This topic is close to my heart, not only because I encounter suicide in my professional career, but also because I've encountered it in my personal life multiple times, most recently twice in the past 12 months. Every year, approximately 1 million people worldwide die prematurely from suicide. In 2021, in the state of Oregon alone, there were 899 documented individuals who lost their lives to suicide. While suicide is influenced by a complex mix of psychosocial, physiological, cultural, and environmental factors, there's strong evidence that suggests that effective prevention efforts can significantly reduce suicide rates. World Suicide Prevention Day was established in 2003 by the International Association for Suicide Prevention, and it has been observed annually on September 10th since then. This day was co-sponsored by the World Health Organization, and it is dedicated to raising awareness, reducing stigma, and promoting actions that can help prevent suicide. The goal of World Suicide Prevention Day is to change the narrative surrounding suicide by fostering a culture of openness, empathy, and support while moving away from cultures of shame and silence. It encourages everyone, from individuals to groups to systems to governments, to engage in honest conversations about suicide and suicidal behaviors. It also works to break down barriers and create supportive environments so that we can help those who are in need. So today, we're just requesting that we also adopt World Suicide Prevention Day on September 10th.
Yeah, thank you, Rebecca. I really appreciate you providing us with the background and then also sharing your personal story as well. Commissioner Thompson?
Mr. Chair, I would move to approve the resolution and order proclaiming September 10, 2024 to be World Suicide Prevention Day and authorize the chair to sign, then read the proclamation, and thank you.
I will second.
Moved and seconded to approve the resolution and order proclaiming September 10th, 2024 to be World Suicide Prevention Day and authorize the chair to sign, then read the proclamation. All those in favor signify with an aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? Okay, motion carries. in the matter of proclaiming September 10th, 2024 to be World Suicide Prevention Day. Whereas suicide is a leading cause of death in the United States, responsible for more than 49,500 deaths in 2022. And whereas suicide rates in 2021 were 36% higher than in 2000. And whereas men are nearly 4 times as likely to die by suicide than women. And whereas suicide is the 11th leading cause of death in the United States. And whereas suicide is a serious public health problem that can have long-lasting effects on individuals, families, and communities. Whereas 883 Oregonians died by suicide in 2022, and with each death, they left behind a grieving community of family and friends. And whereas everyone can help prevent suicide by learning the warning signs, promoting prevention and resilience, and committing to social change. And whereas the 988 Suicide and Crisis Lifeline is available and free for talk or text if you are having mental health related distress or are worried about a loved one who may need crisis support. And now therefore be it hereby resolved that the Clatsop County Board of Commissioners does hereby proclaim Sunday, September 10th, 2024 as World Suicide Prevention Day in Clatsop County, and we invite all community members to join in this day of observance by raising awareness, reducing stigma around suicide, and encouraging well-informed action. Dated this 28th day of August, 2024, Board of Clatsop County Commissioners. Thank you very much, Rebecca. Thanks for being here. I get the pleasure of working with Rebecca daily at Columbia Memorial Hospital. She's fantastic. Next item is business from the public. This is an opportunity for anyone to give a 2-minute presentation about any item on the agenda, except for public hearings or any topic of county concern. Clerk of the Board, are there any members of the public signed up to speak remotely?
No, there are not.
Are there any members of the public signed up to speak in person?
No, there are not.
Okay, we'll go ahead and close business from the public. Consent calendar, do we have any discussion or comments on the consent calendar?
Mr. Chair, I move adoption of the consent calendar as presented.
By second?
Moved and seconded to approve the consent calendar as presented. All those in favor signify with an aye.
Aye.
Aye. All those opposed? Okay, motion carries. Commissioner reports, we'll start with Commissioner Toyoka.
Oh, good evening, everyone. I just want to, just a lot of things happening, but I guess the overriding principles that FEMA buy-up is a big topic. Had a housing task force meeting even today, and there was a great discussion about building on the North 40. Great project to happen. Seaside itself has a lot of nice projects, great projects, and just kind of wait and see what happens of the impacts of the buy-up. Some of the public-private projects, funding could be in question if the buy-up goes through and all these restrictions are as is instead of any amendments. So we'll just kind of wait and see on that one what happens as things transpire. But other than that, we have a great team was headed by Alyssa Gertler. Her trying, and Jay, they're just looking at all the different ways to help remove boundaries and set the environment for creating more housing within the county. So all positive on that front. And thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Commissioner Toyoka. I really appreciate your work with that, with housing and that task force. Thanks again. Commissioner Thompson.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. What did Garrison Keeler used to say? It's been an interesting week in Lake Wobegon. I think you know that for almost 10 years, I've been this County Commission's liaison to the regional COLPAC, Columbia Pacific Economic Development, and the Northwest Act, the Area Committee on Transportation. It's been my honor and pleasure to serve as a member, as vice chair, and as chair. It's time for me to pass on that baton, so I'll look for someone to step up. Transportation is the compelling issue of the upcoming legislative session. I remain interested and available to support whatever activities I can, but I can no longer fulfill those roles. So I'd ask for an adjustment of the distribution of the liaison assignments and another willing commissioner to step into that role because we need to be there.
Okay.
There's that. I want to talk about, as Commissioner Toyoka and the rest of us were discussing, the FEMA BIOP. Public policy that is conducted through dueling lawsuits or by public referendum, I would say is generally speaking flawed. It's rushed. It doesn't engage thoughtfully with how to implement for maximum positive benefit with greatest efficiency. For that reason, I'm interested in supporting Clatsop counties assuming a leadership role, including the use of public funds, to respond to the challenges of this FEMA BIOP, which not only constrains development, it constrains maintenance and redevelopment. It constrains really so much of any activity that will take place along the coasts and shorelines that we have to respond. We can't leave our people to deal with this on their own. We can't leave them unprotected by failing to respond to the challenges presented by FEMA, because FEMA is our insurance company if and when we have various kinds of catastrophic events. So I'm with my fellow commissioners on that. I've been listening and reading to various concerns. There's another topic. Various concerns raised by my neighbors concerning Clatsop County's changing land use codes. Concerns have been raised about reduced public input and various other matters. You know, the governor and the state legislature told us we had to, so that my neighbors think that you and I are powerful enough to defy the governor and the state legislature of the state of Oregon is surprising to me, and it's inaccurate. And to hold us somehow as deficient, I think is malicious and untrue. So I want to do that little editorial comment. I've been active with FEMA wildfire mapping because we are much more likely to encounter wildfires than many other catastrophic events. And it's interesting because I was in that meeting at AOC on Monday, and the smart people were in the room. They were at the table, which is always fun. But they said, oh, they looked at history as well as climate and some other issues. But they looked at history, and they looked back 30 years. You've heard about the Tillamook burn, right? So have I heard about the Tillamook burn. And in 2013 and 14, we had slash fires in my neighborhood, in Arch Cape, that could have turned into another Tillamook burn, I was told. But they didn't. And so they're using the best modeling possible. What they are not taking into effect is the impact of the federal government's refusal to allow timber cuts, timber sales, timber harvesting on federal lands, and now the reduction in allowable harvesting on our state forests because of the Habitat Conservation Plan. Cutting fewer trees means that the fuel load is increased and the fire risk to human life and human property and human livelihood are all negatively impacted. That's a bad idea. And the thing about trees that some people don't realize, because they romanticize trees, they consider them noble beings that should never be killed. And that's a point of view. I love my trees. That's why I live out in the trees. But there are three ways to manage forests. One is that they are a park, and someone pays to trim those trees and thin the underbrush and take care of the fuel load and take care of the risk of disease and wildfire. Another way to do it is to allow timber harvesting, and then the silvicultural practices of the timber companies do that forest management. The third alternative is to do nothing, and then Mother Nature will take care of the fuel load by forest fires. But I don't see any other option than those three. One costs money to manage a park. One makes money to fund county services and special district services and schools. And the third one kills people and animals and pollutes the air and releases carbon into the environment. I think I've just given you my sermon. Well, looking for a reasonable point of view that balances environmental sustainability with a socially just world where we have reasonable jobs that have adequate and stable income for our people and we can live here is the challenge that we have as county commissioners. And we balance fiats that we get from the federal government, from FEMA and others. We balance what happens with a habitat conservation plan. We listen to the governor and the legislature when they say, you will build housing, but we don't quite see how to do it given the other constraints we have. So as I sit on the dais with the Department of Land Conservation and Development, I am eager to have colleagues and partisans of all stripes join us there so that we can navigate, because if we have these demands and we don't have any way to respond to them, how do we do this? How do we do this? So we're frustrated. Okay. I would like that. I would like to have us resolve these efficiently and effectively without resorting to lawsuits. And I hope that our the way we're proceeding does that. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Yeah, thank you, Commissioner Thompson. I appreciate your thoughtful analysis, and I agree with you. I mean, I hope that that's the result of this as well. When we talk about the FEMA buy-up and all these issues, I mean, I hope that we can find some resolution and find a balance, because that's what we're tasked with, to find that balance between economic interests and environmental interests. And so I'm confident that we will get there. It's just sometimes a rocky road. It's not always the easiest thing to do. Really appreciate your dedication to Northwest Act, to COLPAC. I know that was a lot of time and commitment on your part, and you did good work there. And I know we've got big shoes to fill to have someone step into that position. So we'll talk about that in the next couple of weeks, and hopefully we can kind of reorganize our liaison assignments and make it equitable for everybody. But I think we really appreciate all you've done. And other than that, I think I'll go ahead and save my comments for the FEMA buyout business item and turn it over to our county manager.
And I really don't have a report this evening, Chair.
Okay. Let's move into the one item that we added to the agenda, which was the discussion of the FEMA buyout and the Coalition for Floodplain Protection. We just got off of a meeting with the Coalition of Floodplain Protection. A lot of discussion amongst community development directors throughout the state. A lot of coastal counties represented. A lot of folks from the statewide organizations like the Homeowners Association and realtors, and all trying to figure out what the next step is with regards to the FEMA buyout. We received a letter last month saying that we had to adopt some pre-compliance measures. We just received the ordinance, the model ordinance, and the habitat assessment guidance, I think 2 weeks ago. And I think after looking at that, and I know that our community development director is as astute as anyone as far as what this all means and how would it be possible to implement, and everybody kind of comes away still frustrated on how that can be done. I think that when we talked about it today, there's a real need to kind of go a different route with litigation because we need some clarity to the issues here. We need to be able to have some time to determine what this is going to mean to the community. There's some real frustration on the fact that we're not going through the NEPA process as was promised, and I think we're all under the assumption that we had 2 more years of that process in order before we would have to adopt some type of floodplain restrictions. Now we're being told to do it in advance, and we don't have really the tools to do that. So we need to be able to file some type of litigation and say, give us some time, let us sort through the issues. There's so much confusion going on that I think the coalition was pretty much resolute on saying we need to take some action. So I would like to see Clatsop County be one of the first to commit some financial pledge to that effort. It's not cheap. I think we talked about something, maybe $250,000 is what that litigation could ultimately cost us as a bigger, larger group, as a coalition. But Clatsop County has a lot at risk, and I think it would be suitable and totally reasonable for us to commit $25,000 as a financial pledge to this effort. And I think it'll also set the tone for other communities to join, other jurisdictions to join, and other organizations to join. Anything, County Manager, you want to add?
No, I don't have anything to add, Commissioner. Thank you.
Commissioner Toyoka, I see, has his hand raised. Commissioner Toyoka?
I would agree to everything you just mentioned and reinforce it with, I think it would be, a perfect opportunity for, not only local jurisdictions, because I know it would have a profound effect on every city, all throughout the entire county. It would have an effect. We looked at some of the housing summaries today, and just pre-FEMA BIOP, it's very challenging. And you throw in the FEMA BIOP, that becomes very daunting as far as what we can do in the future. So I'd like to see not only other jurisdictions, but I'd like to see a true public-private, collaboration within this effort. Because I know everybody would join in the effort to work towards a good resolution on this issue.
Yeah. Thank you, Commissioner Toyoka. Commissioner Thompson?
Well, the thing that makes this so problematic, Mr. Chair, FEMA's our insurance company. If we don't have coverage from FEMA and there is any kind of catastrophic event, our people will have no coverage if we don't do something effective to stay in compliance with FEMA's directives. So that's a highly weaponized situation.
Agreed.
Thank you.
Who's going to make the motion? Oh. You're the chair. Oh, good. I don't normally get to make the motion. I would move that we financially pledge $25,000 to the Coalition for Floodplain Protection.
I would second that motion, Mr. Chair.
Moved and seconded to commit a financial pledge of $25,000 to the Coalition for Floodplain Protection. All those in favor signify with an aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? Okay, motion carries. All right, that's it. We don't have anything else on our agenda. Do we have anything for the good of the order?
Karaoke now?
All right.